Sup, guys? So back with you yet again, as usual. 4-4 last night. A slight losing night, as that is usually the case when you when you go 500 on your plays. Even though the previous day 3-3 was actually a winner. Last night was not. College basketball was not good to me. 2-4. Of course, we kicked off the night with that Maryland play, and Maryland, it was definitely a loser. I mean, Michigan State, I believe, was winning most of that game. Maryland came back, and then the ending to the game was just ridiculous, though. Like, Maryland giving me hope at the end of that game, and at that point, I'm hoping for overtime, basically, because Maryland wound up getting a rebound, and they had a chance to take the final possession. They had a rebound with probably 10 seconds left, ran up the court. It's like, oh, okay, if they score here, then, they're going to win the game and not cover. If it goes into overtime, they have the momentum. They actually have a chance to cover in overtime, so that's what you're hoping for at that point. But what do? They fling up a bad three. Like, I don't know if Maryland's player there thought that there was less time left than there was. I have no idea. But he took a bad three with 5 seconds left when they could have tried to drive or something. Like, try to drive, draw a foul. You might get the call at home. Like, do something, man. That's not what he did. He throws up a junk three. Michigan State has time to get the rebound. But, of course, at this point, it looks like it's still going to go into overtime. But what does Michigan State do? I mean, the only thing they can do, they throw up a three-quarters court shot at the buzzer because they had that extra time to do it, and it goes in, and Michigan State wins the game. Absolutely insane ending to that game. Both teams shot terribly in the game, so it was not really a Maryland style of game at all. Low scoring, just ugly game. That was bad. We got the win on Furman, blowout win. I mean, that one made me look good. UIC, I think, lost. Illinois, Chicago, not great there. Seton Hall covered and didn't win, but they were in that game. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be in that game. Low scoring, horrendous, ugly game that nobody would watch. I didn't watch it. I think Seton Hall lost by 4. I mean, pretty much exactly what you'd expect in that game. They cover, so that's good. Then the 2 late games lost, of course, with Texas. Texas really had opportunities to cover that one, man. I mean, they made the comeback in the game. I thought it was a great spot to play Texas. I think they had the lead in the final, minute or 2 of the game, and it just swung the other way, and I think probably they wound up having a foul, and they wound up losing the game by 5. It's just brutal, man. Probably on a couple of free throws. Really, you got to hate that. I mean, definitely chances for Texas to cover that. When it came down to a close game at the end, I think it went into overtime, actually, which is even worse because you have an underdog that has the game tied in regulation. That basically means you got the handicap right, and then they still lose in overtime. Absolutely brutal. And then Arizona State did not get there either. I mean, that was bad. But then we did have the 2 wins on the non-college basketball card there. We had Detroit Pistons, the team that always wins for me pretty much, against my Boston Celtics. I can't wear a Celtics hat or a Bruins hat right now, man. Bruins blow a 3-goal lead against the Maple Leafs, and Celtics just have a horrible game, but I expected it, man. It was a bad spot for the Celtics. I didn't expect them to get blown out. I thought they would lose the game, but they lost by probably about 20 points in that game. Make me look like a genius, though, with that easy win on the Detroit Pistons. And then I won on the hockey game as well with the Vancouver Canucks. Canucks were up 2-0 for a decent chunk of that game. Late in the game, I think third period, they were up 2-0. Then I look and it's all of a sudden tied 2-2. I'm like, are you serious? Like, you're going to cost me this bet and I'm going to wind up going 3-5 today? But no, I believe they'll end up winning in overtime. So another underdog taking the game into overtime, but that one actually hit and won the money line play. Vancouver Canucks, baby, even though I hate them otherwise. But they're making me the money, baby. Let's move on to today, man. I don't want to. I always say I don't want to talk too much about these games, but this is really an ugly slate of college basketball games today, man. I mean, you got Bryant at UMass Lowell. Could be an interesting game in the American East. UMass Lowell's really just been sliding, man. I mean, they are definitely on a tailspin, losing 4 of the last 5, 5 of the last 7 games, whatever. Which the only team that they've beaten in that entire span is UMBC. They've lost to every other team that they played. Not a good sign for UMass Lowell, coming off an ugly loss to Vermont. But now they do get Bryant at home. They did lose badly by 23 at Bryant when they played at Bryant. And Bryant's, it's possible that Bryant doesn't totally throw their full focus at this game, man. Bryant, They did just lose to Vermont in a very tough game. Now it's a second straight road game, and they got Maine up next. And those are the two teams that are really competing with them for the 1 seed right now. Really, it's just Vermont. So that game against Vermont was big, but they are still ahead of Vermont. They do need to make sure that they remain ahead of Vermont, but still, coming up that big game could be a little bit of a bad spot for Bryant. So I would actually lean to UMass Lowell in this game. Bryant is up from 3 to 3.5 as a road favorite, though. And I think maybe the line's getting a little bit crazy at this point, laying that many points on the road. I don't know, man. UMass Lowell, I mean, they haven't been playing well, obviously, like I said. But as a home underdog, maybe that's the way you want to look. Robert Morris, don't like the spot that they're in either. They're going to IUPUI or IU Indianapolis now. Coming off a big win over Milwaukee, who I think is actually the best team in the Horizon League, which you wouldn't know based on the records. I've been saying Cleveland State is overrated, which I'm going to talk about more in a little bit. Robert Morris sitting atop the conference. Big win over Milwaukee. They're on a roll right now, but now they go on the road to IUPUI, who you don't really pay much attention to, man. And the other time they played them, they beat them at home by 53 points and scored over 100 points against them. I mean, do you really think that coming off a big win over Milwaukee, they're going to really focus on a team that they absolutely destroyed in the first game and destroyed like by an incredible amount? Like that game, I mean, you almost never see games like that in college, even though, yeah, this is a mismatch, but this is not like, this isn't like a big conference team against one of the worst teams. This is teams in the same conference. IUPUI, I mean, they've lost a bunch of games recently, of course, because they suck. 4 losses in the last 5 games, coming off a loss at Northern Kentucky, but now they're coming back home. Decent bounce back spot, perhaps, for IUPUI. Not their final home game, because they do have one more after this, but it's against Robert Morris, like I said, so it's a big revenge spot for IUPUI or IU Indianapolis. They did lose their last 2 games on this floor as well. It's in Milwaukee and Oakland. Pretty ugly loss to Oakland, too. So, should be a focus spot for them. It's just a matter of, are they good enough to hang within that number? And the number does look a little short, looking at these teams' records. Robert Morris down from 7.5 to 7. 60% of tickets on them. 81% of the cash coming in on IUPUI. That is the way that I lean. I would take the points if I was going to play this. Close to being a play for me, actually, on IUPUI. That would be the way that would look, mostly because the revenge factor I actually think is really strong in that one. If you beat somebody by over 50 points, you almost never see that happen. So that would be the way I would look in that game. Let's see. Most of these games are really not that interesting. So lucky for me, I'm going to skip a bunch of them and then just hit the other sports here. Yeah, I mean, none of these games are really that great. Chattanooga and UNC Greensboro, that is going to be a big game between the 2 teams that are atop the SoCon, even though, like I said, I think Samford still has a case to be made that they're the best team in this conference, even though they lost some games. Chattanooga hasn't lost since they lost at home to Samford. They got revenge against Samford on the road. They've been on a complete roll. They're coming off a game where they almost lost to Citadel, which I mentioned last night. That was why I faded Citadel last night, because Chattanooga was like a 17-point favorite in that game, and Citadel almost pulled off the upset. I think it was even in overtime. So I think Chattanooga, they got caught looking ahead to UNC Greensboro here, man, because this is a big game. UNC Greensboro actually beat them on their own floor, so this is actually road revenge for Chattanooga as well. So I kind of like Chattanooga in this game. UNC Greensboro, it's not like they're going to be unfocused, though, and they're playing the team at the top of the conference right now. They're coming off an easy win over Mercer, coming back home from that, from 3 straight road games. They do have Samford up next, which is a big game as well, but both of these games are big. So I expect focus out of both of these teams, but I do think Chattanooga maybe just in a spot where they're a little bit extra focused and maybe getting a little bit of extra value because of the way that they've looked in those last couple of games. They're a 1.5-point underdog on the road here. So odds makers also telling you Chattanooga is the better of these 2 teams. I agree with that. That's the way I would look. Jacksonville State is at Liberty. This is a game between the 2 teams that are atop the CUSA here, which I think Liberty is the best team in this conference, as I keep reiterating. Liberty's on a 5-game win streak, winning against a couple of the teams that have been doing better in this conference. Now they got a home game against Jacksonville State. This is going to be a big game, man, especially for Liberty, because they lost at Jacksonville State, man. Liberty, they don't have that many conference losses, and that is one of them. So this is a revenge spot for them, and it's a big game. It is a big game for both teams, but Liberty is the better team, as the odds makers are telling you. They're 6.5-point favorite here. actually up from 6 to 7, 84% of the cash coming in on them, with 50% of tickets evenly split. So I think public might take a look at this game and think, how am I getting 7 points with Jacksonville State, who has the slightly better record here, even though they know the name Liberty? It looks like should be a really competitive game and you're getting all these points, but that is not the way that I would look in this game. I would look to Liberty, the better team, who's at home and is in revenge here. Jacksonville State coming off a win over UTEP, which is not an easy thing to do. UTEP's been pretty decent in this conference this year. So they're playing a couple of big games in a row. Liberty's coming off an easier game in their prior game, I believe I just pointed out. So it would be Liberty would be the side I would look for in that game. All right. What else? I do like Little Rock as well, just because they are the better team, and they actually lost at home to this Eastern Illinois team, so it is road revenge for them. I don't know how they lost. As 10.5-point favorites, they lost at home to Eastern Illinois. So this is a spot where I would look to play Little Rock on the road here, even though they do have SIU Edwardsville up next, who is one of the teams atop this conference. Little Rock, this conference is probably between Little Rock and SEMO, though, as far as which team is the best team in this conference. I have it as SEMO right now, but we'll see. Little Rock's coming off an easy win over Western Illinois. But again, this is a big revenge spot, man, in my opinion. And that Eastern Illinois game was actually weird. It got postponed, and then I don't remember. I think it actually might have wound up being played. One of these games that I was looking at actually wound up being played at a neutral site. I don't know if it was this game or not. Yeah, it was, I guess. This was played at St. Charles, Missouri. So this wasn't even a home game for Little Rock. I think it was supposed to be initially. I don't know. I don't know why that game got postponed, why it got moved. Whatever the case is, it is a pretty big revenge spot for Little Rock because they are the better team and they lost to this Eastern Illinois team. So I like Little Rock in that one. They're up from 5 to 5.5, laying points on the road. Line might be a little bit short, though. Eastern Illinois does play good defense, although they can't score at all. So we'll see what happens there. Rutgers and Michigan is one of the only games, maybe the only game with a ranked team tonight. Or no, St. Mary's is now ranked. We'll talk about that in a minute, by the way. This game, yeah, I mean, Michigan, I haven't even really looked at this game, man, to figure out what I think about this game. Michigan, they just beat Nebraska in that weird low-scoring game where I lost on Nebraska. Michigan was coming off that game against Michigan State, coming back home where they did just lose that last game here to Michigan State. So they may be focused for that reason. I don't really consider this to be that unfocused of a spot here. Rutgers going through the motions right now, though they have won their last 2 games, but against Washington and USC, who are not very good. Now they're having to step back up in class to play this Michigan team. Maybe not going to be an easy thing to do. Rutgers does have 2 really, really good players, though, in Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. But beyond that, they have basically no one else. But they are fun to watch just because those 2 guys are going to probably be high draft picks. Michigan's down from 11.5 to 10 in this game, though. 56% of tickets, only 54% of the cash. So the money actually looks like it is coming in and playing Rutgers plus the points there. I don't have much of a read on that game. Where I do have a read, though, and I'm sorry, I've not put my banners in here, so I'm going to have to do it on the fly, so bear with me. Wright State, actually, this is a money line play. I should have put money line on that, but Wright State on the money line. I'm not laying 114 points. Hold on, let me edit that. This is a Wright State money line play is what this is going to be. Let me get that in there. Come on, man. All right, there we go. Apologies for that. Yeah, Wright State on the money line. I think it's at minus 114 right now. A cheap price. This is going to be on ESPN2. This is one of the Horizon League games tonight. Gets an ESPN2 billing for some reason. But I do think we have a big luck index discrepancy here. I mean, I know that we do on KenPom. And I think this line just looks very deceiving. Like, you got a below 500 Wright State team against this Cleveland State team that's had one of the best records in the Horizon all year. And Cleveland State is actually the underdog. Like, what gives? The public is probably going to look at this and think, like, that makes no sense. It's easy money to take Cleveland State, right? Well, it doesn't work that way. Again, like, I expect the public to come in on Cleveland State. It's a very deceiving line here, but I think we're looking at 2 teams that are a lot closer than what you think. Yes, the odds makers are telling you Cleveland State is the better of these 2 teams, but I don't think it's by that much. It's not as much as what they're telling you. Cleveland State, they play slow. They play good defense. Their offense isn't really that good, and they're 80th in KenPom's luck index, so they're up there in luck, meaning that I've been talking about this all year. They're overperforming Wright State, yeah, is a bit lower in Ken Palm's rankings. Wright State is actually the better offense. They're the worst defense. They play faster, and they're way lower in luck index. So Wright State, kind of a mid-tempo team. They may be able to want to try to speed this game up against a Cleveland State team that likes to play slow. Now Cleveland State might have to keep up with Wright State, who can score better than they can and runs. And if Wright State is able to do that, that should help them in this game. Wright State down at 336th in luck. So we have a big luck discrepancy. Like I said, Ken Palm is telling you, don't look at these teams' records like that hard, like that thoroughly, or that hard. Like, don't put that much stock into them, I should say, because Cleveland State is not as good as they look, and Wright State is not as bad as they look, is what Ken Palm is telling you there. I would agree with that, and that is the way that I'm going, but I think the situation sets up decently to do this as well. Cleveland State, yeah, they're coming off a loss to Oakland, but that was kind of a tough game. It went into overtime. It was only a couple days ago. I think it was 3 or 4 days ago. Oakland was actually the favorite in that game. So, again, another game just like this with a misleading line where it's like, why was Oakland favored in that game? Well, odds makers are telling you, again, there wasn't that much of a difference between those two teams, even though Oakland had the worst record as well. Now this is going to be a third straight road game for Cleveland State, which is not that easy to do, kind of bouncing all over the place. And then they have their final home game against IPFW coming up last. And, yes, I know they're still fighting for seeding here, but still, I think this is just a tough spot for them, and I think Wright State is going to want to show up in this game. And I believe it is also revenge for Wright State. Let me make sure of that. In-season revenge. Wright State, yeah, they lost by 14 at Cleveland State, so it is revenge for a double-digit loss as well. And for Wright State, it's their final home game, so it's senior day, and they just lost their last game on this Florida Northern Kentucky. Not a great performance. They were coming off an ugly loss to Green Bay in the game before that. Really, really disgusting loss. That's Green Bay's only win in conference play. And Wright State, you got to think they would bounce back from that, but they lost again to Northern Kentucky. Maybe they were looking ahead to this game, and maybe this is the game where we're going to get a better performance out of Wright State, man, because that's just some ugly play. You got to think they're going to be more focused on this game. Again, it's senior night as well, so it's the game, your last home game of the season. Last time some of these guys are going to be on this floor, especially if you got seniors. You want to celebrate those seniors, so it's just a little bit of extra motivation there for Wright State. It hasn't been all bad for Wright State. I mean, they did beat Robert Morris in here, so it's not like competing on this home floor against some of these better teams is totally unheard of. They beat Oakland at home. They beat Green Bay at home. Who cares? Detroit at home. Most of their conference wins have come at home, and IUPUI, so they've been better at home than on the road as well, which, of course, you expect in college basketball. The home court advantage, fairly strong. So Wright State on the money line is the play there. If you want to be a bit more risk-averse and you want to lay -1, if the -1 is out there, that's fine. You'll just, if they win by 1, it'll push instead of winning. Nate, what's up, man? Bologna. Not my last name and not a very good lunch meat, I will say. Bologna, I think, is one of the worst out there, man. It's basically like a cold hot dog. It's not good. All right. Although people have been getting pissed at me for my food takes. Let's see. I do lean to Middle Tennessee against New Mexico State. I'll just point that out. New Mexico State on a nice run right now. They beat Jacksonville State and then Kennesaw State. A couple of big road wins for New Mexico State, reeling off 3 wins in a row. Now they get Middle Tennessee, who they already beat on the road. So this is road revenge for Middle Tennessee. So I would kind of lean that way in this game. Let's see. New Mexico State is down from 2.5 to 1.5. So odds makers are telling you Middle Tennessee is actually the better of these two teams. They are ahead of them in the standings, not by a whole lot. Middle Tennessee just beat Sam Houston to kind of bounce back, but not an impressive win, really, just beating Sam Houston by 4. But Sam Houston is better than what their record indicates, as I keep saying. This game, I would lean to the Middle Tennessee side, and that's where the money looks like it is going as well. So we'll see there as well. We got this game in the Big West, actually. It looks like it's going to be a fun one between UC San Diego and Cal State Northridge. I don't have an angle on this game, but Northridge, it is revenge for them. They did lose at UC San Diego by 25. So it is a bit of a revenge spot there. I played against Cal State Northridge against UC Davis over the weekend because they had beaten UC Irvine. It was a second straight road game with UC San Diego up next. I thought it was a major sandwich spot, and I think UC Davis should have won this game outright. They did cover for me, but Cal State Northridge came back and pulled off the win there. And now you got, let's see, UC San Diego just absolutely blasted Hawaii by almost 40 points. Yeah. Holding them to 44 points, beating them by 39. So they might be feeling a little bit high on themselves, but I don't know, man, because Cal State Northridge is right behind these guys in the standings, and they beat Irvine. So UC San Diego may still have reason to kind of take them seriously. So I don't know what I would want to do in this game, man, but it could be a good one. Northridge, again, they did beat Irvine, so it's not out of the question that they might have a good game here as well. UC San Diego's down from 6.5 to 6 as a road favorite. Line looks like it's dropping on them a little bit. UC San Diego this is the best that they've been, man, in program history this year. They're a balanced team this year, and last year I think they were pretty bad on defense and really good on offense, but this year they're kind of the whole package, and I have them winning this conference right now. It would be cool. I think this might be only their first or second year of tournament eligibility. It would be pretty cool to see them get into the tournament in their first or second eligible year. Then we got Cal Baptist is coming off this game against Grand Canyon, and that was a big game, man. Grand Canyon got their revenge, but Cal Baptist was pretty much out of this game, and they made a huge comeback. I think Grand Canyon took their foot off the gas. Couldn't put Cal Baptist away, though, and Cal Baptist really got back into this game, and they were within a couple of possessions within the final minutes, and they cut it to 2 in the end. So Cal Baptist is coming off that, a close call against this good Grand Canyon team. Second straight road game going to Seattle. They did already beat Seattle at home, so it's revenge for Seattle, even though they only beat them by 2. So the spot looks like it sets up better for Seattle. I do lean that way, but the problem that I have with it is that Seattle is coming up a pretty big game on the road against Utah Valley as well, and they have Grand Canyon up next, so it is a sandwich spot. But if you're Seattle, you probably don't overlook really anybody at this point, so I think they will show up to play Cal Baptist, a team that they lost to the first time they played them. So still would lean to Seattle in this game, and the spread looks misleading as well. You have Seattle laying 3.5 points here. They're a below 500 team. It looks like pretty easy to grab the points with Cal Baptist. Oh, this Cal Baptist team beat Grand Canyon too, so how could you not, right? But I think Seattle's been underrated all year, man. I think their record is not indicative of what they actually are. I've been saying that too. You can find these teams that are just better or worse than what the record is for pretty much the whole year. Seattle's up from 2 to 3 with juice, maybe 3.5 there. So I like Seattle in that one. My final play is going to be on this. I mentioned the St. Mary's game, and you probably know, if you know me, you know which way I'm going on this. Let me put the game in here, and it is Loyola Marymount plus 13.5. Yes, I'm playing a big underdog for once here. St. Mary's, I think we're just fading St. Mary's at their peak right now, man. I mean, St. Mary's, they just got up into the rankings for the first time this year. I mean, they've been ranked before in program history, but that is still a big, it's a big achievement for them. They get ranked in this WCC conference. They wind up being a ranked team. How did they do that, though? Oh, yeah, they went on the road and they beat Gonzaga. And Gonzaga was a road favorite in that game. Gonzaga was a home favorite. What am I saying? Gonzaga was the home favorite in this game by 6.5. I think the spread at the game at St. Mary's was like St. Mary's -1 or something. So it was almost a pick 'em. But St. Mary's, in beating Gonzaga on the road, St. Mary's swept the season series with Gonzaga. And I think that may be the first time that they've ever done that in program history. I'm not sure about that, or at least since Gonzaga's been a name program. St. Mary's, they almost always go 1-1, or Gonzaga wins both games. That's just been the way that it is. St. Mary's getting the season sweep is huge. It's a huge achievement for this program, historically. Now they're coming up that huge win, and they got to go face Loyola Marymount, who they already beat at home, and boy, did they beat them. They beat them by 25 points, just absolutely crushed them. The game was not close, but then again, Loyola Marymount, they had some bad turnover issues. Yeah, St. Mary's did beat them out on the boards there. Both teams actually shot really well from 3, so the game statistically looks like it should have been a little bit closer, except for the rebounds. So I don't know exactly what happened in this game as far as why the game was so discrepant. St. Mary's did have 3 more threes made. The number of field goal attempts was pretty close. So I don't know, man. Was it free throws? Yeah, it was free throws. St. Mary's in this game, yeah, they took 28 free throws, and Loyola Marymount only took 13. So that was a huge difference in the game, the free throws. And you might get a little more home cooking in this game, even though the refs might want to help St. Mary's a little bit. The home team usually has a little bit of an easier time drawing some fouls there, man, and they can control the pace a little bit more. So I like all that. This line's up from 12.5 to 13.5 with juice. I do not agree with that move. I think this is a letdown spot for St. Mary's. I think it's a big revenge spot for Loyola Marymount. St. Mary's does have their final home game up next as well against Oregon State, even though they did already beat Oregon State as well. They may consider that to be a bit of a bigger game because it's a team that came out of the Pac-12, a bigger name team. I think they might look past Loyola Marymount, man, for all these reasons. Loyola Marymount wants to draw back to 500 in conference play. They just beat Pepperdine to end an ugly loss streak. They had a bad loss streak, but 2 of those games were on the road. So I think beating Pepperdine is kind of them righting the ship. But then this is also senior night for Loyola Marymount, man. So this is their final home game and final regular season game of the season. So this is a big game for them, man. They might get more people in the stands for this one. Try to make it a celebration for the seniors. Play a big game against St. Mary's. And we don't need them to win this game. And Ken Baum, I think, has this line right at 13. I believe he has Wright State winning by 1 as well. So he has these games right in line with this. But St. Mary's, we know what they are, man. They're a really good team, but they're a slow team, and they play defense. That's what they do. Marymount is a little bit less slow, but they're still a pretty slow team as well. So you're probably going to get a slow-paced game here. And Loyola Marymount is almost in the top 100 defensively, according to Ken Baum, even though, yeah, they're really high in the luck index, which worries me a little bit. But still, if you're getting a defensive game with 2 teams that like to slow the game down and both teams are pretty good defensively, again, that makes it easier to take the points with or that makes it easier for the home team to cover a huge number like this as an underdog. So I think that style of play is also beneficial for taking a home underdog like this. As I say, every point is worth a little bit more when that's the case. So that's going to be the play there. Let's head over to the NHL. Trying to get this done here, man. It's a big NHL card. I got one NHL play. I really don't like the slate here, man, at all. There are just games where it's like, oh, this team's in a bad spot. I want to fade them. But then you look what the other team's spot is in, and they're in a bad spot too. The New York Islanders have flipped from a plus 116 dog to a minus 113 favorite. Very, very bad times for the Boston Bruins, man. My Bruins, they are terrible to the point where now the Islanders are the favorite on the road. It might be because Swayman is getting the rest in this game too. Could be Korpisalo in this game for Boston, and that probably just makes it even worse for Boston with their lesser goalie in there. Bad times. 50% of tickets, 87% of the cash, and a flipped favorite line move on the Islanders. So some big market indicators on the Islanders. I don't disagree with it. The Bruins, even though they've lost 5 games in a row, that game against Toronto was just brutal, man. How do you have Toronto completely on the ropes? 3-0 game in the second period. Toronto been pretty good this year, has been pretty good this year. Bruins up 3-0 in this game. They go into the third period, still up 3-1. They allow the tied game. Then they retake the lead 4-3 after blowing the 3-0 lead. They have the 4-3 lead in the final minute of the game, and they give up a tying goal in the final minute and then lose in overtime. Absolutely brutal. For the Bruins, I don't know how they get back up off the mat after that. The Islanders have not played well out of the break either, but they've been getting smoked in most of these games. They played a tough game against Dallas, and then they got smoked coming off of that by the Rangers. Looks like it should be a bit of a bounce back spot for the Islanders, so I agree with the move on that towards the Islanders. Let's see. San Jose, I believe they just took Winnipeg into overtime. Yes, that's a crazy performance with San Jose. Going on the road is I think Winnipeg was a minus 500 favorite, and San Jose took them to overtime. Now they have to travel from Winnipeg over to Montreal. I don't think it's a great spot for San Jose here. Montreal, not a great team either. But the problem is Montreal is not in a good spot either because they just beat Carolina 4-0. So I think they're going to be in a letdown spot as well, which, again, that's one of the problems I have with some of these games here today. Montreal up from minus 205 to minus 207. 92% of tickets, 99% of the cash on Montreal. I think Montreal is still the preferred side here just because both teams are in bad spots, and then you kind of want to look to the team that's better, which in this case is Montreal. San Jose is just so bad. They're this big of an underdog, but I won't touch this game. Columbus is coming up beating Dallas. Huge win, 6-4. Now they go on the road to face Detroit. Doesn't look like a good spot for Columbus to me, man. Columbus, they could score, though, man. Their offense has been playing really well. Their defense, definitely suspect. So I'd probably be looking to the Detroit side here, but Detroit is coming off a win, too, over Minnesota, which is still a pretty decent win for them. So, again, I don't know what I would do with that game. I think Columbus coming off the crazier win, though. Detroit's, though, down from minus 150 to minus 145. 93% of tickets, only 62% of the cash. So the market read and the money move looks like it's against Detroit. And I'm not sure I would agree with that. I would not want to play Columbus coming off that crazy win over Dallas. Speaking of crazy wins, Calgary just won at Washington. And I think Washington was in a bad spot. I think I made a mistake overlooking this game, man. Washington had just stomped Pittsburgh and Edmonton, and they were coming off that big, just crushing of Edmonton. I think I probably should have come in on that letdown spot there. Calgary got the win there. Bad spot for Washington there. So that's a big win for Calgary. Now they got to go down to Tampa Bay, and they got Florida up next. So it looks like a sandwich spot for Calgary coming into this game. Even though Tampa's been playing well as well, I think if you're going to overlook any of those three teams, it's going to be Tampa out of those three. I mean, it's sandwiched in between the two Stanley Cup Finals teams from last year. So if you're going to overlook one of those teams, it would be Tampa. I don't know that you overlook any of those teams. Tampa is on a roll right now, but they just beat Edmonton. They just crushed Edmonton. So, I mean, you got, Calgary didn't beat Edmonton. Calgary beat Washington. What am I saying? So they're not sandwiched in between the two finals teams. They beat Washington, The Lightning beat Edmonton. So I think that puts both teams in letdown spots. I don't know what I would do in this game, that being the case. Where's the Lightning here? Where are we looking? Let me see. Tampa Bay, down from minus 210 to minus 201, but they do have 59% of the cash on them. 56% of tickets over on Calgary. Probably would still lean Tampa Bay. I think the spot is a little bit worse for Calgary, with it being a sandwich spot there. And speaking of Stanley Cup Finals, Edmonton is at Florida in the Stanley Cup Finals rematch, and Edmonton still hasn't won a game out of the break. So you got to think Edmonton's going to be a little bit extra motivated here, and they have not been playing well at all, man. Coming out of the break, look at these scores, man. They've lost these 3 games by a combined 17-7. I mean, that's horrible. Absolutely horrible defense out of Edmonton here. Their defense, I think, just kind of falling apart, even though they could score still. But coming off that 4-1 loss to Tampa, you got to think they're going to turn it around to some extent here and play better against the team that beat them in the finals last year. But Florida coming off an easy win over Nashville, so they're not exactly in a bad spot either. Edmonton, what are we looking at here? Florida's down from minus 120 to minus 117. 62% of tickets, 81% of the cash on them. So the cash is coming in on Florida. I'm not sure that I would agree with that. I think Edmonton's got to be like even extra motivated here to try to get this one. So that's the way that I look at that one. Pittsburgh is in this home and home zigzag spot where I thought they were in a good spot at Philadelphia. They got destroyed again. They've just been getting wrecked in all these games. Now they're coming back home. They're removed enough from the All-Star break, and Sidney Crosby's celebrating after Canada won with him that I think Pittsburgh's got to get back on track here, man. Now they got embarrassed again by this Philadelphia team, and now they get them at home. You got to think it's going to be a bounce-back spot. But Pittsburgh's down from minus 120 to minus 106. 67% of tickets on 73% of the cash on Philly. It makes no sense to me, man. I don't know how the line move looks like it's on Philly there. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it, but that's just the way that it is. Let's throw in my one NHL play here, and then I do have 2 NBA plays, which I don't even think I have time to talk about these. Utah Hockey Club is my play here, and this line just looks ridiculous, man. Like, how could you possibly lay a money line favorite like this on this Utah team? It's close to 500 against this Wild team that has a really good record. Looks very misleading, but as I keep saying, the Wild are not as good as they look. The Wild coming off a couple of tough games. A tough game losing to Detroit like this. 2 tough games against the Detroit team. So been playing pretty well. Now they go on the road. Usually a first game of a road trip, I would say, is a good spot. But going out into elevation like this, I don't think is a great spot. And they got Colorado up next, which is a look-ahead spot. So that's the bigger game, and that is tomorrow. So I think they may overlook Utah here, man. And Utah's coming off an easy win over Chicago. Well, not an easy win, but winning against a bad Chicago team. It's a whatever kind of win, and Utah's just staying at home. So Utah is in the much better spot, and the money does look like it's coming in on Utah, up from minus 130 to minus 157 now. 77% of cash on 50% of tickets evenly split. So I don't know if it's also like factoring in like a goaltender switch or what's going on there, but I do agree with that. I agree with the spot on Utah. Scott, what's up, man? Thanks for the Toad Tower. Yeah, Edmonton's defense is They're not doing well, man. Let's go over to the NBA, and then I'll get out of here. There aren't many NBA games today. There are a few that are pretty big, though. Denver and Milwaukee. I mean, is that a big game? I guess maybe it is. Denver coming off that game over Indiana. Decent win for them. Now going to Milwaukee. Milwaukee coming off a loss at Houston. Both teams coming off good games, or big games, I should say, against decent teams. So I don't know. Nuggets are up from 2.5 to 3 with juice on the road. 69% of tickets, 88% of the cash. So the market read would put you on Denver in that game. I don't disagree with it. I'm going to come in and play the Charlotte Hornets, man. Plus 10.5. It looks ugly to do, but Charlotte Hornets is going to be the play here. They got, 85% of the cash on them, 52% of the tickets on the Mavs, up from 8 to 10.5. Mavs are going to be public here, man. I mean, the Mavs, they just almost took the Lakers to the wire, man. I mean, I had the Mavs in that game. That was a huge game for Dallas. Now they're returning home from a road trip off of that game where they were within 1 point with like 4 minutes left to go against the Lakers. You know that was a huge game because it was the battle of the trade. So Dallas coming off that, I just don't think it's a good spot for Dallas coming off of that, man. And Milwaukee up next is a bigger game as well. This Charlotte team has been playing so bad that they've lost 3 straight games now, not even to great teams. Golden State's pretty good, but Sacramento, not really. Portland, definitely not. They lost those 3 games by a combined 131 points. Absolutely ridiculous. That's, I believe that's the worst 3-game loss margin in the history of the NBA. So you got to think Charlotte's got to be playing for pride. I mean, the issue I have is they're playing a ton of road games in quick succession. They're playing 6 games in 9 days, so their rest isn't good. But still, if you're losing games by this much, those games are over well before the game actually ends. So I don't know that they're really going to be that tired if, you're just not even playing your starters by the end of those games. So I think that kind of cuts into the fact that they've played so many games, more games than Dallas has in this quick succession. And Dallas is returning from the Pacific Coast as well off a much bigger game. Charlotte just has got to be playing for pride here, man. Even though they look like they're giving up, this has got to be one of those games where they might show up against a team that's probably going to be a playoff team. You got to think they're going to show up here. And then I do also have a play on New Orleans plus 7.5 against Phoenix. I'll just keep this really quick. The Suns are returning home from a road trip, man, and they just played a barn burner against Memphis. It was big game that went into overtime in 151 to 148. You can't look much better in a loss, at least just scoring a ton. But now they're coming back home. They've been on the road for like a week. I always say returning home from long road trips, it tends to be a distraction. You've been away from home. You got to get stuff done at home. Are they really going to pay attention to this New Orleans team? But this New Orleans team quietly has won 3 of their last 4 and played pretty well against Dallas as well. They have most of their star players there intact, at least. And they got a more fit Zion Williamson there, I think. I think he's playing now and has lost some weight. And they may actually just show some focus against Phoenix here. Yeah, I know they beat San Antonio without Wemba, but at least that's going to give them momentum coming into this game. And New Orleans is starting a road trip, which tends to be a much more focused spot. So I like that a lot better. I think it's a more focused spot for New Orleans. Team starting a road trip against a team returning from a road trip is always going to be a spot I'm going to look at because that team gets to get out of that home distraction spot and, focus on basketball and try to win the game, start the road trip off right, whereas the other team's coming back into the distraction. And then I know I said I was going to fade Minnesota, but I didn't realize they were playing the Lakers. So Minnesota's coming off that big win over OKC, but the Lakers are coming off that big win over the Mavs in that huge battle of the trade. So both teams coming up big games. They're both in spots where I would look to fade them, so I don't want to do anything with it. Lakers down from 6 to 5.5 here with juice. I don't know what to do with the game. Suns, by the way, 54% of tickets, 85% of the cash on the Pelicans. That's going to do it for me. Plays one more time. Wright State in college basketball on the money line. Loyola Marymount plus the points. Utah Hockey Club minus 150. NBA Charlotte plus 10.5. New Orleans plus 7.5. Towergate Toad on Twitter. Patreon.com/Towergate to give us some support. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for hanging out, and that will do it.